So this is an excerpt from an angry email I sent to Gwen in November of 2022 after I had obtained my copy of their presentation. So I had obtained a copy of the District 7 MPO Board presentation November 2022 by accident. They were not going to give me any advance notice at all because they're shitty people. They're shit people. They're absolute goddamn scumbag people. They ended up giving this presentation at the February 2023 board meeting. They had no intention of giving me the courtesy of an advance copy for comment. I sent Gwen an angry email. Understand that they'd abused me and the PFI for over 6 years by this time. So I'm pissed, okay? I'm fucking pissed. I'm still enraged. So this is the following excerpt from my email to Gwen. And that's why he says, well, I kind of anticipated that Parsons would be upset when he came in to this meeting. You know, that's why they have that extra deputy there just for me. Gosh, really? Really, Gwen? You kind of anticipated I'd be upset? I wonder why. Why would I be so upset? You just took a big steaming shit on my life's work, lying about it, discrediting it, and then you omit the truth about the spooey. You know, what congestion? Yeah, okay. Am I pissed? You only cost me $57 million because you are a goddamn piece of shit. Okay, so this is what I say to Gwen. So here's some questions for you. Do people understand that the F.PFI isn't my PFI? That the F.PFI fails to apply my PFI specifications for geometry and signalization? That you misrepresent the PFI and defame me by presenting the bullshit PFI to the public and MPO board, who'll think I had something to do with. Doesn't work. To wrongly think the bullshit PFI is more my design than your clown posse's. So they're showing this as a PFI, and people would see that and go, oh, that's what the PFI should look like. Only it's not. Do people know that you deliberately refused to add me to the study team even though FHWA said it was okay and they thought it was a good idea to ensure the PFI would be competently designed? They were so right. Do people know that you told me I would be able to comment on the F.PFI in a timely manner before going to the public or MPO? This whole thing in February before the MPO, that was really an ambush. Like I said, I only got a copy of the presentation by accident. They had no intention of giving me the courtesy of an advance notice to comment. But of course, even if they had, they would have just disregarded, just dismissed, and ignored my comments. So it wouldn't have mattered. Do people know that getting information on the F.PFI design was like pulling teeth, and that eventually I would get access to the F.ERC, their electronic review comment system, but F. would actually stop using. Yeah, as soon as I got access to their system, they quit putting comments on it. Their own staff. Do people know that all my comments to the study team were either ignored or dismissed? That not a single PFI comment of mine was used? Do people know that I was completely frozen out of the F. process to design my invention? That I objected to the F.PFI time and time again and was ignored and dismissed every time? Do people know that Kirk Bogan replied to me that I should not expect anyone at F. or consultants to use any of my work, my PFI proposal, my website, anything from me to design the PFI? Well, to be fair, he did say, well, don't expect them to use any of your website. But he was basically saying, don't expect us to use any of your information. or take any of your comments. You know, do people know that I told you and your people that the PFI needed an eastbound auxiliary through lane? Well, it needed more auxiliary through lanes than that. But point is you add the necessary number of auxiliary through lanes to get a working intersection. You just do it. It's part of, you know, the target is level service D, which is attainable with the PFI putting in adequate number of auxiliary through lanes. But I was refused with 3 bullshit reasons. One, that it would mean pedestrians would have to cross an additional lane, meaning 4 instead of 3, even though the SPUI has pedestrians cross 9 lanes. But that's okay if it's a SPUI, I guess. 2, I was told that FDOT doesn't typically build auxiliary through lanes on 6-lane roads, even though there are literally 3 intersections within 10 miles of this one on Dale Mabry with auxiliary through lanes. And 3, that Pasco County doesn't allow 8-lane roads, even though the Pasco LRTP states in black and white that auxiliary through lanes are allowed on 6-lane roads if necessary. Do people know that I specified that the PFI signals must operate as 2-phase 60-second cycles, but I was refused? That I specified that synchro must not be used to auto-time the PFI signals, but I was dismissed. That I was told FDOT wouldn't time the PFI signals as I specified because their consultant said it didn't make a difference anyway, as if they'd know. Now, he didn't respond to my email. False reporting by the Tampa Bay Times. So after that board meeting in February, and I was removed from the room by the deputy sheriff, there was an article in the Tampa Bay Times. I did not receive any notification of this article. The reporters did not contact me for comment, but I'm featured in the article. I only happened on it by accident doing a Google search. So this is an excerpt. This is from the reporter is Barrett, is her name, and so the title of this article is Transportation Officials Zero In on Plan to Unclog US 41 SR 54 Intersection. Okay, that's a lie. That headline's a lie. They're not zeroing in on a plan to unclog the intersection. They are fine with 41 remaining a parking lot in the future. Okay, which the reporter was in attendance at the meeting. She had to have heard my 3-minute address where I state that 41 is going to be congested. But this is her headline. They zero in on plan to unclog the intersection. That's a lie. So the engineer of a plan, me, not chosen, created a ruckus at the meeting and was asked to leave. So I created a ruckus. So it says here, the engineer of a plan. I mean, that's not really true. I didn't engineer the plan. I didn't design the PFI I patented it. That distinction is completely lost in this article. And the engineer of a plan. I mean, it just is almost nonsensical. They do the design. They do the alternatives. I don't. No one else does. An engineer who designed one of the other options. If I had designed it, it would have been right. An intersection without an overpass. So they don't say parallel flow intersection. They don't say it's patented. So accuse the state road department of misrepresenting the traffic conflicts in the chosen model. That's like gobbledygook. He also said the agency miscalculated the effects on pedestrians, traffic flow, and surrounding properties of his design by not following their own handbook. Well, that is true. It's not my design. It's my patented intersection, but they did not follow their own handbook. So they have me quoted here. They designed it to fail, said engineer Greg Parsons, who claimed they had spurious intentions. His plan, he said, is superior in every way. Yeah, that's true. It is. He added that the discussion of possibly going with an overpass on 41 rather than 54 would certainly increase costs and add more conflicts than the version on the table, which is true. As officials explained their rationale for the approach they've picked, Parsons interrupted from the audience, calling the analysis false. A bailiff told him to leave the meeting. Yeah, in their subtitle here, they say I was asked to leave. Yeah, I wasn't asked to leave. I was ordered to leave. After the presentation, Florida District 7 Department of Transportation Secretary David Gwynn told the board that he expected that Parsons wouldn't be happy that his alternative wasn't chosen. It's not that I'm unhappy because my patented design wasn't chosen. It's the how and why it wasn't chosen. There are conditions. I would accept the PFI being rejected, but those conditions were not met at all. They committed fraud. They misrepresented my PFI. That is completely lost in this article, and at no time did this lady, and there's another reporter at Tampa Bay Times who has reported on this project in the past, at no time was I contacted to get my response or my feedback at all. He said that Parsons was a, quote, smart guy. He invented a concept, but it was not clear how the design would work. He never said that. He didn't say that it wasn't clear how it would work. He said it was potentially confusing. If they haven't figured out how it works after 7 years, then what the hell? What the hell? But he never said that. Unlike the other alternatives, Parsons' intersection design has not been built anywhere else. That's that's true, but it has been, the proto PFI. But yeah, it's new. And that was part of why it was not chosen, even though that's not a valid justification. That's not a valid justification to say, well, it's never been built, therefore we're not going to build it. And as I've said before, they could have told me that the day I turned in my proposal to them almost 7 years prior to this. It includes confusing movements. No. He said potentially confusing, which is just something he just pulled out of his ass to say something. And there's no engineering behind any of that at all, which they are required to do by NEPA. And if it didn't work in real time, Gwen said, it could have failed spectacularly. Just ignore the fact that the SPUI absolutely will fail spectacularly. That was not in the article at all. Nothing in this article about the SPUI failing. And you've got a headline here, the transportation officials zero in on plan to unclog the intersection. So this is just more disinformation. I wasn't asked to leave, but I was forced by a deputy. Nor am I just some rando engineer. I am the inventor, patent holder, and sole expert on the PFI, calling out FDOT fraud. So that is completely lost on this article. She wrote that I designed the alternative. No. FDOT designed the PFI alternative, which they designed to fail by refusing to follow my specifications and ignoring or dismissing all my technical information and comments. She could have contacted me and got my feedback. No, they weren't interested in that. This is so typical of journalism, is to just lie. That's all they do, is lie. I can't imagine why anybody would get news from corporate media. That's just all they're doing is feeding you bullshit to manipulate your opinion. This is just another example. Then she reported Gwen saying he expected I wouldn't be happy that the PFI wasn't chosen. She doesn't bother to find out why, creating the impression I just have sour grapes. Yeah, the reason I went in there, the reason I was so upset with them is because I have sour grapes. Of course, it did cost me $57 million. Let's just ignore that. But I just have sour grapes because they didn't pick the PFI. Well, let's talk about all the fraud that they did. Let's talk about the fact they never actually did a feasibility study of the PFI. Let's talk about the reasons that he gives to say no to the PFI. He could have told me the day I turned in my proposal to them instead of 7 years later, and that they are themselves non-reasons. I'm not angry simply because FDOT didn't choose the PFI. It's the how and why FDOT chose the SPUI over the PFI. That makes me angry that they have committed fraud by misrepresenting the SPUI and PFI and failed to comply with NEPA and the FDOT PD&E manual. This context is entirely missing from the article. I sent an email to her and CC'd Bowen, who is the other reporter, correcting the article's inaccuracies, and they ignored me. So here they are. I just see them as partners in more crime. Happy to be, just fraudulent mouthpieces for the DOT. I like this guy, actually. I guess I didn't really know him. So, oh, sweet old lady. Oh, geez, she doesn't mean any harm. Yeah, well, just happy to lie. It's just another day. Okay, so now I'm going to go through side-by-side comparison of the SPUI and PFI by the numbers. And the SPUI is based on their plan, their signalization, but my VSIM results correcting for unmet demand, which they should not have had. And then the PFI is based on my design. Now the physical impacts of the PFI is based on their estimate, because I wasn't going to take the time to try to update all the physical impacts based on my design. I believe that with my design the physical impacts would be less. For instance, they showed the PFI having 3 residential relocations when it should have none. So if anything, I guess my point is, if anything, the PFI is going to get better, not worse, with my design in terms of impacts. So all of this is the level of service and delay in queue. So I've shown it before. I'm not going to linger here. Just again, the SPUI will be a level service F, PFI level service D. The SPUI fails to meet the project purpose and need. The PFI does meet the project purpose and need. The SPUI should not show average delay. It should be showing maximum delay. That's what they should show for the SPUI. There is no average delay under oversaturated conditions, and the only way they can show maximum delay is to correct for unmet demand. So with the PFI, you get a minute of max delay and a tenth of a mile of Q. At the SPUI, you get 22 minutes of max delay and almost 3 miles of max Q. Then the user benefit, this 20-year user benefit, that's the life of the PFI as an intersection. So the SPUI's lifetime should be measured in like 50 years, because the functional life of a bridge for FDOT estimating purposes is 50 years. So the SPUI will be there for at least 50 years. The PFI, you arguably would have a 20-year life, but it's going to go 50 years too. No matter how long it's there, it's going to have better level of service than the SPUI. But over a 20-year period, it's $2 billion user benefit. User benefit, again, is the time and fuel savings. So they estimated it at $48 million a year, and with a correct PFI and correct SPUI, I believe it's going to be $100 million a year. It's probably double what they had estimated, which would put the user benefit at $2 billion. And over the 50-year life of the SPUI, $5 billion. Under vehicle safety, this is a selection factor they did not include at all, but the SPUI has more vehicle conflict points than the PFI, and those are crossing conflict points, which are the most severe. That's where you have a T-bone type crash. And then I included the results of the study that correlates level of service and crash rates and severity. So based on the level of service, the PFI would experience lower crash rates and less severe crashes. So there's a check for every one of these that it's better for by alternatives. So as you can see, almost all of them are going to be under the PFI. Pedestrian and bike safety, there's no question that the PFI is safer for pedestrians, and for bicycles too, given the number of islands available for people on a bike to stop if necessary. It is a longer distance for them to go through. Well, both the SPUI and the PFI require a long distance to get through the intersection relative to a conventional intersection. I think it's about the same, and I have to go back and look at it, but the difference between the two for a bicycle getting through, I think they're fairly similar. But the PFI does provide more islands, more refuge places where cyclists can stop if they get caught between signals. And with the SPUI, you have a lot of different movements going through the intersection versus two movements at the PFI, where it's just one direction or the other direction. So maximum number of lanes crossed in a single crossing, 9 at the SPUI, 4 for the PFI. Maximum vehicle pedestrian conflict points in a single crossing, 5 for the SPUI, 1 for the PFI. Total pedestrian crossings, the SPUI has 12 and the PFI has 16, so there's a check under the SPUI. Total time to cross from the southwest to northeast at 3.6 miles per hour. The SPUI is 6 minutes and the PFI is 3 minutes. The SPUI requires 300 more feet of distance to travel. And then both have 7-foot buffered bike lanes. Residential access impact, well, these are local access impacts. With the PFI, if it's correctly done, there should be no residential access impact and low business access impact and low local road impacts. Whereas the SPUI is high for all three of those. But they designed the PFI incorrectly so that they can show that the PFI is even worse. Potential right-of-way impacts. So again, the SPUI is much more than the PFI. Double the parcels impacted, almost double the business relocations, 3 residential relocations to none, and more than double the total right-of-way required. The railroad track crossing, they showed 5 vehicle train conflict points. That's false. Should be 6 because there are 6 movements that are going to cross the track to SPUI. So that's the same for both. I do say that the SPUI has the benefit of reducing traffic that crosses the track by 50%. But I also point out there's a trade-off with reduced visibility to approaching trains. Environmental impacts. Obviously the SPUI is going to have much more environmental impact. More noise, more wetlands are impacted, more floodplains are impacted, and it has more contaminated sites. Community impacts. The SPUI is high with the visual impact of a bridge and retaining walls, 1.25 miles. Of course, there's graffiti potential with the retaining walls. The PFI doesn't have any walls for that. And landscaping potential for the SPUI is low, and it's high for the PFI. There's a lot of green areas in the PFI. Construction impacts, that was ignored by FDOT. That they want as much construction as possible. They don't see construction as a problem for local businesses and property owners and motorists driving through their construction site. For them, the more construction the better. The more disruption the better. So the construction duration, PFI probably half the time or less. Construction disruption, the SPUI is going to be a big disruption because it's major construction or heavy construction versus the PFI, which is paving for the most part. Impact on CSX operations. The SPUI is likely to involve temporary closure of the railroad track while they place steel, possibly when they build their foundations. I don't think they have to put in a temporary track. Yeah, they probably don't need to put in a temporary track or a track runaround. But still, they're probably going to have to shut down the track for some limited times. Whereas the PFI should have very low impact just to move the gates. And then the costs. And this is based on their numbers. So the total project cost of the SPUI is $222 million. And the PFI is $108 million. With my fee, which is, I set at 50% the cost savings. That puts my fee at almost $57 million. So the total cost of the PFI with my fee would be $165 million. The SPUI is $222 million. With a project cost savings of almost $57 million. So if you just go through by the number of checks that I've got, the SPUI has 4 and the PFI is 32. I would say that the PFI is basically an order of magnitude better than the SPUI. Like in every appreciable way, the PFI is better. And the only thing that they can say, they can say the two things: that the PFI is new and it's never been built. I find that to be an excuse. That's not a reason. That's just saying, well, let somebody else deal with it. We don't want to, which is craven. I'll just say that's a craven excuse, and that, well, the SPUI they're used to and the PFI is new, so let's go with what benefits them and is convenient for them, no matter how much it costs the public or the taxpayers. So it's that don't bother the bureaucrats. That's the story. That's what's coming from FDOT. Don't bother the bureaucrats. And of course the MPO board is happy with that outcome because it's one step closer to their the freeway that they dream of. Three conditions I would accept the PFI being rejected, and none were met. So with respect to the PFI being rejected by a state or local DOT, I've never felt entitled nor believed I could impose the concept of anyone. I believe these agencies exist to serve the public and taxpayers, not corrupt politicians, not themselves, nor their buddies. Thus, they have the legal and ethical obligations to give sincere consideration to designs that can deliver better projects. Well, the PFI promises to do that. Yes, the PFI is new, but everything we have was new once. The question is, does the new thing appear to be substantially better based on initial information? If yes, it deserves open-minded, honest consideration. In the case of the PFI, the concept was developed by me, a credentialed and experienced roadway and traffic engineer, using the same software tools FDOT and FHWA use to develop preliminary designs, and accompanied by detailed analysis showing the substantial advantages the PFI offers. The three conditions I would have accepted for the PFI's rejection are: Condition 1, if I was told up front by FDOT they had no intention of building the PFI for any reason. If, as Gwen stated to the MPO board in February 2023, that District 7 was going to reject the PFI on the grounds it's new and potentially confusing, I should have been told this within a month or two of submitting my very thorough PFI concept proposal in February of 2016. It's highly unethical and cruelly callous, really, to string me and the public along for 7 years with no intention of ever building the PFI in the first place. Over those years I had hopes and dreams, wasted thousands of hours, thousands of dollars, and traveled thousands of miles across Florida. Like some kind of twisted, sick joke, it was cruel to let me think the PFI had a chance. This shows District 7 and the MPO were prejudicially opposed to the PFI from the start. See, and I've proposed the PFI to many different DOTs and local government agencies, and they've all rejected it basically the moment I propose it, every time, without consideration, and always with a BS stupid excuse. It's always on some administrative excuse for them to say no and not give me any more consideration. Okay, I think all of those are terrible. I think it's awful that the DOT treats the public and the taxpayers with such contempt. Okay, and it enrages me that they do that, that they've done that to me over and over again. Okay, I find that to be completely scummy and terrible. Yet, I accepted it. Okay? I was pissed off that they would just say no and then give me some lame-ass excuse. But I hadn't invested years in it. I moved on to other opportunity and really didn't give any more thought about it. I was just disappointed, frustrated, pissed off, but moving on. But in this case, they accepted the PFI as an alternative. Of course, in hindsight, I know that was a big fat lie. Because they are mean girls after all. But, I took it at face value. You could say that I was suffering from a terminal case of hopium at the time. And that's true, I was, because I knew this was going to probably be the last opportunity I would have before the patent expires. So yeah, I was hopeful. But, that was a foolish hope. But if they had said no, it would have just been another just lame-ass excuse to get rid of me. But I would have gone on to something else. But they didn't say no. So the matter of the PFI having a problem because it's new was not a concern until first mentioned by Gwen at the February 2023 meeting. I was never given any indication prior to this, and so never given a chance to respond to this concern, demonstrating District 7's unfairness and bad faith. So condition 2, once added as an alternative and after a good faith, competent, rigorous, and objective evaluation, District 7 discovered a credible fatal flaw. Okay, so once it becomes an alternative, everything changes. Now, I strongly believe that they have to act in accordance with the rule-based framework that I've talked about prior. That they are now constrained. That they have to do things. They have to follow the law. They have to follow their own policies, their own procedures. They have to act accordingly with respect to professional standards of due care. So none of that was done. But if they had done all of this, if they had acted in good faith, competently, the most competent thing they could have done was let me do the design. They could do the analysis, but let me do the design, and then it would have been done correctly. They had no intention of letting me do it. They had no intention of it being done correctly. But had they, this is what should have happened, is they should have let me do the design, they check it, and they analyze it. Rigorous, that's Federal Highway's word, that they would do their evaluations in a rigorous manner, which would have meant, in the case of the PFI, if there's a concern over driver confusion, then use FHWA driver simulator and answer that question objectively. Don't just talk out your ass like Gwen did. And objective, but they were prejudicial from the get-go. So I could have accepted the PFI being rejected if a credible fatal flaw was discovered, or even just a potential credible risk existed, but only after a good faith, competent, rigorous, and objective evaluation had been performed. So maybe I've missed something. In the decade plus that I developed the PFI, after all my years of being a highway and traffic engineer, maybe I missed something with the PFI that they discover as part of a good faith, competent, rigorous, and objective evaluation. I'd be very disappointed, but I would accept it. that not only would said fatal flaw have been identified as such, but that it would also be substantiated using the software tools available, i.e., meaning the fatal flaw is quantified, not just a gut feeling. Again, if they're acting in good faith and they say, oh well, the school buses, that's a serious concern we have in how they impact the PFI. Well, then what they do is they evaluate that using like VSOM, and they model the school buses, and they have somebody look and determine, well, how much time do school buses stop before crossing the track? How many buses cross the track? Are there going to be expansion plans for new schools? Okay, there's no reason to grow the number of school buses there if there's no schools that can be built. So, or add school buses if there are going to be more schools being planned. So, I mean, they could have done that. They should have done that. They did nothing of the sort. So, and further, that I be given an opportunity to engineer a solution to the flaw. Yeah, so in the case of school buses, if they said, hey, this is a problem, do you have an answer to this? Give me the opportunity to design a solution. If I can't come up with an acceptable solution, okay, then we have to reject the PFI. Fine. I would accept that. But none of the alternatives received good faith, competent, rigorous, and objective treatment, let alone the PFI. But the PFI got the worst treatment by far. Yeah, I mean they did a crap job with the SPUI as far as the analysis goes, and they did a crap job with the CFI, putting a freight train through the intersection. But by far they did the crappiest job with the PFI. Condition 3. Once added as an alternative and after a good faith, competent, rigorous, and objective evaluation, the public rejects the PFI. So once all the alternatives were subjected to, all that, good faith, competent, rigorous, and objective evaluation, and the PFI was shown to be the very best alternative, as it is, and even if District 7 wanted to build it, say District 7 said, this PFI thing really is the best option, so that's what we're going to recommend. We're going to go forward with the PFI. Okay, but the public says no. Like there's like a movement opposed to the PFI, that it's not just a few people, but say that there is a large number of people who are opposed to the PFI for whatever reason. Just like you see a lot of people will oppose a roundabout. And even though the roundabout might be the very best design for the public, if there's enough opposition to it, then it becomes a no-go. Because at the end of the day, it's supposed to be the public who benefits. And if they don't want it, then it could be a very loud minority, and likely is a very loud minority, but it is what it is. So if FDOT had done this with a good faith, competent, rigorous, and objective evaluation of the PFI and said, hey, this is what we want, but the public comes out and says no, I would accept that. So once all the alternatives were subjected to a good faith, competent, rigorous, and objective evaluation, and the PFI was shown to be very best, even if District 7 wanted to build it, but the public says no, then it should be rejected. I would be disappointed, but would accept the PFI being rejected on that basis. None of these conditions above were met. None of them. The PFI never received a good faith, competent, rigorous, and objective evaluation. The FDOT was acting in bad faith from day one. They were, incompetent. The question is, were they deliberately incompetent? I believe that. I believe they were deliberately incompetent. That they know better, and they deliberately did a bad job. Definitely not rigorous. How can you say that they did a rigorous job when they completely exclude the guy who invented the PFI and the only expert on the PFI? And they definitely weren't objective. They were prejudicially opposed to the PFI from day one. Or you could say they were prejudicially wanting the SPUI, no matter what. No fatal flaw was discovered, and the public was never really given a chance to see, let alone comment on the PFI, except at the one District 7 open house, though 20 were scoped. And at the sole public meeting, FDOT presented fraudulent alternatives. Given that none of the conditions above were met, I do not accept District 7 rejection of the PFI at all.